Hey folks, today we're going to start our character project, and we're going to do this first through creating character sketches. And character sketches, or character thumbnails as they're sometimes called, is what we make just to sort of give us some very, very quick iterations that sort of demonstrate different ways that we can bring our thoughts together and sort of solidify ideas about what sorts of shapes we want to use, what sorts of costuming we might have, what the most interesting parts of the character are, right? It's a lot easier to do this if you are working with something that's smaller and doesn't really take you a long time, rather than make something that's really quite elaborate and then it turns out that it's not something that you like, right? So what we want to do first, again, the first thing that we should always do before we create any sort of a figure or character is we should begin with collecting references. References are always a good resource to have around, regardless of the project that you are working on. So for this particular project, we're going to be working sort of in an Overwatchy kind of a style, and the character that I think I'm going to make or sketch out today, rather, is maybe something like a swordsman, maybe a prince, something like that. So I've gathered a whole bunch of different references of some possible themes and things that I could use that might be visually interesting. Now, we're not going to work with all of these ideas right now. Again, really what we want to do with a thumbnail is we want to just sort of come up with a very quick pose and just sort of decide on shapes and see what works and what doesn't, right? You shouldn't be taking more than a couple of minutes on a thumbnail sketch. It's really kind of not what a thumbnail sketch is. A thumbnail sketch is meant to be fast, right? So if you had to knock out 60 of these, you could do it very easily, in a couple of hours. So to do this, first of all, what I'd recommend is, grab your brush, make yourself a new layer. And in your tool presets, if you've used the class tool presets, you're probably going to want to use, I usually recommend using the 0 block for sketching anything. It's a very sketchy, sort of organic type brush. And I size it down quite a bit. Let's maybe make it 9 or 10 pixels. All right, and we'll call this sketch. Okay. So one of the things about thumbnail sketching is that you generally don't want to overthink it. Really, thumbnail sketches are just kind of shapes, right? So what I usually recommend is that start with maybe like a box that's maybe 2.5 times longer than it is wide. You size up your brush here a little bit. There we go. So now we basically kind of like have a head and cloak kind of a thing going on here, right? And we might say, oh, okay, well, there's a foot there, and there's another foot, right? If I pair off some of this stuff, we might go, oh, okay, I see, that's a cape we've got going on there, right? And then everything else sort of falls into place, right? If this character has maybe a hand out here, we can put our arm right there. We can give him or her staff and something like that. When you sketch, make sure that you're, again, trying not to move your wrist too much. That'll give you nice straight lines. It also helps if you're using this sort of thing to create circles, right? Just keeping your wrist straight and letting your arm do the drawing is usually very helpful. I mean, that was just freehand, right? So the more you practice that, probably the better off you'll be. Okay, so I've got my character. Maybe I want to make them, swordsman or something, so I might put my sword over there, or I might have, you know, a sword in the back here, something like that. Depending on what I want. And I can just erase any parts that I don't like. Now, one of the other things that we try and do when we're doing these sorts of sketches, again, we're keeping things really, really loose. So what we want to do, though, is we want to sort of make some decisions about what would be important or interesting on this character, right? So if we go behind our sketch and we make a new layer, we might make a layer called just fill for right now. And let's go into our grays, and if we just maybe pick a lower medium-ish gray, something that's a little bit darker than the background, what we can do is we can color in very sloppily, but that's just fine. It's okay to make a little bit of a mess. Right, we'll color this in a little bit, and then we'll make some decisions, right? So maybe my cape is going to be a darker cape. Maybe there's some sort of a collar to it, right? Yeah, something like that. Maybe this arm goes in over our sword. And you might just sort of think through some different textures, right? So I might actually take some of these textures here or these textures here, right? And I might do something like this. And let's grab just some white, right? Some lighter color here. And I'm just going to make like little visual notes as to where detail would go. Right, I might put some detail on my sword if that's particularly important. Or, you know, maybe I don't like this patterning here. That's fine. You know, I could actually take my time and create maybe like a detailed, you know, dragon or something on the on the front of my character. Right. Put a little crown on that dragon, something like that. Right, that might be kind of interesting. And then we might say, okay, there's going to be armor here and here. We'll make sort of a jeweled sword or something like that. Might give him a helmet. You know, do a big like poofy, I don't know, feather or something up on the top of that, right? So that's really kind of like all I would need for my character sketch, and you can keep those together or separate, whatever you see fit. I've done a few other ones over here, so I'm just going to actually take my sketch layer and just make it a little bit lighter. Control E to merge those together, Control T, and we'll just size it down just a little bit, and we'll add it to my other character sketches. And yeah, we can sort of decide from there, you know, which of these sketches we'd like to work on. Just because you have a more detailed sketch doesn't mean that that's the one that you want to work on. Might just be, you know, you're fleshing out ideas a little bit more than you would be with a different one. So we'll stop this video right here, and then when we pick up next time, we're going to talk about how we basically translate one of these sketches into a pose, and make a pose and sort of begin sketching out what a costume would look like.